Into whether a secret ballot should be allowed during a parliamentary vote of no confidence in President Jacob Zuma are underway in the Constitutional Court in Johannesburg. In fact, proceedings just breaking for tea there. The United Democratic Movement brought the application to compel the National Assembly Speaker, Baleka Mbete, to allow the secret ballot. All political parties represented in Parliament have joined the court, but the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, the Institute for Security Studies and the Shoshokiza Progressive Movement have successfully applied to be friends of the court. Advocate Mbete has been arguing for the UDM. He says in a submission that it is the obligation of Parliament to hold the executive accountable.
One has to consider that, after all, these members of Parliament are also citizens of South Africa. They have the right, in terms of Section 15 of the Constitution, the right to freedom of conscience. They have the right, in terms of Section 16, to freedom of expression. If you want to go to the intimidation route, well, they have a right to life, they have a right to personal integrity, and so on and so on.
Well, court has adjourned for tea now, but let's go over to the Constitutional Court where we find our reporter Aldrin St-Pierre, who's been following the arguments. Aldrin, good afternoon to you. In some way or the other, this has been a very technical morning. We've heard a lot from Mbete this morning, haven't we?
Well, definitely. At the center of this application is Section 102 of the Constitution, which speaks about the removal of the President via the Constitution. However, though, the Speaker of Parliament has been arguing, even in the heads of arguments, that as it stands currently, the Constitution doesn't have a provision for a secret ballot against the President in a motion of no confidence. But, Devin, what we should also understand is that Section 102 of the Constitution states that once the President has been removed via vote of no confidence, whether this is secret or not, the entire executive must resign. This means that the ministers as well as the deputy ministers must resign. So now the argument has also been that does the omission of a secret ballot mean that secret ballots are prohibited when it comes to a motion of no confidence against the President? And Mbete is saying that omission does not mean prohibit. It doesn't mean that because that particular part saying that there must be a secret ballot, it does not mean because it has been omitted from the Constitution that it has been prohibited. He argues that the Speaker of Parliament does have discretion around whether there should be a secret ballot or not. And remember that one of the reasons that the UDM is asking for a secret ballot of no confidence against the President is because they are arguing that there have been intimidation or death threats against ministers as well as ANC MPs. That has been the argument that they have been bringing forward. However, Chief Justice Mogoeng not too keen on that argument, saying that that issue should be left aside and they should rather focus on the interpretation of Section 102 of the Constitution. Another issue was raised in terms of Section 57 of the Constitution, which speaks around the powers of the members of Parliament in terms of the powers that they hold to build their own rules, to draft their own rules. And the argument has been that whether that section 57 of the Constitution doesn't give the National Assembly discretionary powers in terms of the rules of Parliament to determine whether they want to have a secret ballot on an issue such as this. So it'll be quite interesting to see what happens going forward, but it seems as though, just looking at some of the arguments and the concerns raised by the justices, that they are leaning towards a situation where we'd have probably a ruling at the end of the day, or once the ruling is eventually handed down, that would say that Section 102 of the Constitution can be interpreted as the rules of Parliament rather does give discretionary powers to the Speaker of Parliament in terms of a secret ballot.
Aldrin, and that's a very significant ruling if it does happen. It basically means that irrespective of who wins today, the Speaker of Parliament is not compelled to go either way. It still lies with her discretion, and I speak of Baleka Mbete here.
Yeah, well, definitely, and that's the reason that you have the argument around the motion, the argument around the separation of powers, because we know that the courts have been quite cautious around encroaching on the powers of the executive as well as the powers of the National Assembly. The argument that was made by Chief Justice Mogoeng, for instance, was that if you look at the Constitution as it stands at the moment, and when we speak about the electorate, that's you and I, when we go and make a vote, we do our votes in secret. He says, could it have been that it was deliberately done that way by the drafters of the Constitution, that they took into account that there should be a secret ballot for the electorate? So the reason why they've left that out in terms of a vote of no confidence against the president is that they want Parliament to adopt its own rules, to interpret the law their own way and determine by themselves whether or not there should be a secret ballot against the president. Because considering that, for instance, when you have the president being elected as the president of the country in the National Assembly sitting, when there is more than one person or more than one nominee to become president of the country, the members of Parliament go through a secret ballot process. And some of the arguments have been that because the laws and the rules of Parliament allows for that, it means that the rules of Parliament must also allow for the removal of the president via secret ballot.
All right, Aldrin St-Pierre, you've been following events in that constitutional court this morning. Thanks very much indeed for your time.